Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Sophie Carter sat in the bustling cafe, nervously checking her watch. She had never been in a place like this before. The polished marble floors gleamed beneath her feet, and the chatter of the high-powered businessmen around her seemed to fill the air. Sophie, in her worn-out sweater and faded jeans, felt completely out of place. Her stomach twisted as she adjusted the strap of her bag and tried to gather her thoughts. She had been waiting for a man she didn't know, a man who had promised her a way out of her financial troubles. The strange message he had sent her a week ago still lingered in her mind. "I need your help. Meet me at the cafe tonight, and we'll discuss everything." Sophie had agreed to meet him, desperate for any solution that could help her with the mounting debt she was drowning in. Stay tuned for the next part of Sophie's journey. The next day, Sophie found herself walking into the grand lobby of a luxurious hotel, feeling like an imposter in her worn jacket and scuffed boots. She had never been inside a place like this before, and the polished marble floors and glittering chandeliers felt like a world she could never truly belong to. Her heart pounded as she approached the check-in desk, the clerk smiling politely but with a look that seemed to say, "What are you doing here?" Sophie gave him a tight smile and showed him the room reservation Jameson had arranged for her. The room was stunning, a spacious suite with a breathtaking view of the city skyline. She still couldn't believe it. It felt like a dream, or maybe a lie. She had agreed to Jameson's proposal out of desperation, but now that she was here, in this place, everything felt surreal. Stay tuned to find out what happens next, and if Sophie and Jameson can keep their feelings hidden or if they'll begin to develop something real. The gala was in full swing, with sparkling chandeliers casting their light over the elegantly dressed crowd. Sophie felt like she was in a dream, one that she didn't belong in. As Jameson guided her through the sea of well-dressed people, she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was watching them. Cameras flashed from every direction, and the whispers of society's elite seemed to echo in her ears. Her heart raced as she tried to keep a smile on her face, focusing on Jameson's calm, confident demeanor beside her. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back, a touch that seemed to anchor her in the chaos around them. Despite the nervous tension, Sophie couldn't help but notice the way Jameson's presence commanded the room. He moved through the crowd effortlessly, exchanging pleasantries with everyone, yet always keeping her close. At first, Sophie had been unsure of the arrangement, her doubts clouding her mind. But as she observed Jameson in this world of wealth and influence, something shifted. He wasn't just playing a part. He was a part of this world, and Sophie was now, by association, part of it too. Stay tuned for the next part of Sophie's story, as she continues to navigate the world of wealth, deception, and the unexpected emotions that come with it. The night carried on, but Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between her and Jameson. The gala was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and lively conversations, yet it all felt distant now. Sophie found herself lost in thought, replaying the moments of the dance, the softness in his eyes, the way his hand felt on her back. Was this all part of the act? Or was there something more? As the evening wore on, Jameson kept close, never leaving her side for long. He introduced her to a few people, all high-powered individuals who seemed to size her up the moment they met. She felt the weight of their gaze, but Jameson remained a steady presence, never allowing her to feel alone or out of place. Sophie couldn't deny the tension building between them. They laughed together more now, exchanged quiet words, and shared moments that felt surprisingly intimate for a contract engagement. But every time Sophie allowed herself to get lost in the moment, the harsh reminder of why she was here, why this was all happening, came crashing back. She wasn't here because of love. She was here for the money, for the escape from her financial ruin. Stay tuned to see how the tension between Sophie and Jameson unfolds as they continue their complicated, growing relationship. The next morning, Sophie woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She groggily reached for it, still feeling the effects of a restless night. Her mind was clouded with doubts. and the events from the gala seemed to replay in her head over and over again. Jameson's touch, his words, the way he had looked at her, they lingered in her thoughts like a whisper she couldn't escape. Sophie quickly pushed the thoughts aside as she checked her phone. It was a message from Jameson. "Meet me at the office at noon. We need to go over some details for the upcoming charity event." Sophie sighed, knowing she had no choice but to carry on with the role she had agreed to play. She wasn't here to fall in love, and she had to remind herself of that. This was just a job. With a quick shower and a hasty breakfast, Sophie left her room and made her way to the elevator. As she arrived at the hotel's lobby, she noticed a few familiar faces from the previous night's gala. They gave her polite smiles as she passed, but Sophie couldn't help but feel out of place. She had spent most of her life blending in, never the center of attention. But now, in this world of wealth and glamour, she was a temporary fixture, a role to be played until it was no longer needed. Stay tuned as Sophie navigates the blurred lines between business and emotion and discovers how far she's willing to go for a life she never imagined. As the days passed, Sophie found herself fully immersed in the role she had agreed to play. She spent hours going over the event details, rehearsing her lines, and learning the press schedules. It felt like she was preparing for a performance, but no matter how much she studied the material, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. Every time she looked at Jameson, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. He was still the same confident, calculated man she had met, but there was something different now. They had shared moments, small touches, fleeting glances, that made Sophie question her own feelings. Was she just imagining it, or was there more between them than just a business arrangement? The gala was just days away, and Sophie could feel the weight of the event looming over her. She had learned to stay composed in front of the cameras, but the thought of being in the spotlight again, with everyone watching, made her nerves flare. Jameson, on the other hand, seemed perfectly at ease. Every time they spoke, he exuded authority and control, as if nothing could shake him. He was a man used to having everything in his life perfectly orchestrated, and Sophie had to admit that part of her admired him. But that same admiration came with a sense of unease. She had started to wonder if this fake engagement was ever going to be just that, a facade, or if, somewhere along the way, their lives had started to intertwine in ways neither of them expected. Stay tuned to see how Sophie navigates the growing connection between her and Jameson, and whether they can keep their feelings in check or if the lines between business and emotion will begin to blur. The next few days were a blur for Sophie. The charity event had come and gone, but the weight of what had happened stayed with her. She had played her part flawlessly, keeping up the facade of a perfect couple alongside Jameson. The press had loved them, snapping photos and writing articles about the power couple, and for the most part, Sophie had been able to keep up the act. But behind the smiles and the polite conversation, something was changing. Every time she looked at Jameson, it was harder to deny the connection between them. She had tried to convince herself that it was all part of the deal, that she was just fulfilling her role in the arrangement. But the way he looked at her, the way his hand lingered on hers, it all felt too real. And every time she thought she had her emotions under control, he would do something small, like compliment her, or share a quiet moment with her. That made her question everything. Sophie knew she was falling for him, and the realization hit her harder than she expected. She had signed up for this arrangement with clear boundaries in mind. It was a business deal, nothing more. She was here for the money, for the stability. But now, the lines were blurring. She wasn't just playing a role anymore. She was starting to feel something real, something that scared her. And it terrified her even more to think that Jameson might feel the same way. Stay tuned as Sophie and Jameson face the next step in their relationship and the risks of opening their hearts to something real. The following days were filled with tension and uncertainty as Sophie and Jameson tried to navigate the shifting dynamic between them. After their conversation in his office, everything felt different. There was no more pretending, no more facade. They both knew the stakes were higher now. Sophie had agreed to give this a real chance, but the doubts still lingered in her mind. She had never been in a relationship like this before, especially one that had started as a business arrangement. Every time Jameson smiled at her, or touched her hand, Sophie's heart raced. She wasn't sure if it was because she was scared of falling deeper or because, for the first time, she felt like she belonged. The connection between them had grown stronger, and yet, Sophie couldn't shake the fear that it was all too good to be true. She wasn't the type of woman who fit into Jameson's world, and that was something she couldn't ignore. She had always been the underdog, the girl from a small town trying to survive in a big city. Jameson, on the other hand, was a powerful CEO, a man used to getting what he wanted. Sophie had to remind herself of that, especially when he would look at her in a way that made her heart flutter, or when they would share quiet moments that felt too intimate. Was this real? Or was she just another part of his life that he could easily discard once he no longer needed her? Sophie wasn't sure what the answer was, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't keep pretending it wasn't happening. Stay tuned to see if Sophie and Jameson can overcome their fears and take the leap into a real relationship, or if they will remain trapped in the complexities of their past. The days following the gala felt different for Sophie. Jameson's confession had left her heart racing, but now, the weight of it all settled in. They had crossed a line, and Sophie wasn't sure what would happen next. She had agreed to take a chance on something real, but the more she thought about it, the more she wondered if she was just setting herself up for heartbreak. Could she truly trust him? Could she believe that this wasn't just another business arrangement? Sophie's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions as she tried to make sense of what they were becoming. Every time she saw Jameson, every time he smiled at her, those doubts faded just a little. But they didn't disappear completely. The truth was, Sophie had never let herself fall for someone like this before. Her life had always been about survival, about working hard, staying focused, and never letting emotions get in the way. But with Jameson, things were different. The attraction was undeniable, and the connection they shared felt real. She had never felt this alive, this open to love. But she was still scared. Scared that it was too good to be true. Scared that she would end up heartbroken, just like she always had been. It was the night of their first official dinner together as a couple, and everything felt like it was leading up to this moment. Sophie was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress one last time before she left her apartment. She had never felt more conflicted in her life. The woman staring back at her in the mirror looked confident, poised, and ready for the night. But inside, she was a storm of uncertainty. Could she really trust him? And if she did, what would that mean for her future? When Jameson arrived to pick her up, he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. His gaze was soft, filled with warmth and affection, and Sophie felt her heart skip a beat. "You look stunning," he said, his voice low and sincere. Sophie smiled, her nerves still lingering. "Thank you. You look great too." They made their way to the restaurant, a quiet, intimate place where they could finally be themselves, away from the world's eyes. As they sat down, the conversation flowed easily between them. Jameson wasn't the cold, distant man he had once been. He was more relaxed now, more open, and it made Sophie feel like she was finally seeing the real him, the man behind the powerful CEO facade. Sophie had spent so long guarding her heart, but tonight, she felt like she was letting her walls down, piece by piece. She was starting to believe in the possibility of something real between them. The meal passed in a haze of laughter, shared glances, and quiet moments. Sophie felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in love. After dinner, they took a walk outside under the stars. Jameson's hand brushed against hers, and Sophie felt the familiar spark between them. The connection that had been growing over the past few weeks seemed to come to a head as they walked side by side, the city lights shining around them. They reached a small park, the sound of the city fading away as they stood together in the quiet. "Sophie," Jameson began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking about everything. About us. And I don't want to keep pretending anymore. This isn't just a business arrangement. I want you in my life. I want to be with you." Sophie looked up at him, her heart in her throat. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where everything would change. She had been scared, unsure of what the future would hold. But in that moment, standing in front of Jameson, she realized that she couldn't keep running from what she felt. She loved him. "I want that too," Sophie whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm scared, but I want to take this chance. With you." Jameson smiled, his eyes lighting up with happiness. "Then let's do it. Let's take the leap together." He took her hands in his, pulling her into a gentle kiss. It was soft, tender, full of promises. And in that moment, Sophie knew that she had found something real, something worth fighting for. Their journey had started as a business arrangement, but now it was so much more than that. It was love, the kind of love that made everything else fade away. And so, Sophie and Jameson's story began a new chapter. A chapter of love, trust, and the possibility of a future they would build together. Stay tuned for their journey as they face new challenges, new dreams, and new beginnings.